Now to the political storm raging in Washington. At the center of it, the Brett Kavanaugh hearings and the allegations of sexual assault hanging over the Supreme Court nominee. The Senate panel is preparing to hear from his accuser on Thursday. Professor Christine Blasey Ford has agreed to testify before the Senate committee, but details still have to be worked out. That, as the Trump White House hinting that this could be a stall tactic. At the same time, the president has said that Ford should get a chance to tell her story. She says the Supreme Court nominee sexually assaulted her when they were teenagers. He denies the allegation. Jill Abramson has covered the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court nomination for the New York Times, and she served as the newspaper's Washington bureau chief and eventually executive editor. She's also the co-author of Strange Justice, The Selling of Clarence Thomas. We've reached her in New York, rather. Jill, pleasure to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. You were in the room 27 years ago when Anita Hill testified about sexual harassment allegations against then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas, who was then confirmed and still sits on the bench today. What parallels do you see between that event and the one today and through this week involving Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford?
The parallels are clearly almost eerie. Sitting in that hearing room back in 1991, the things that I remember most clearly are Anita Hill's incredible state of mind, her credibility, her steadiness, and she was really entering a lion's den. There were protesters packed in the hallways, all pro Clarence Thomas, saying she was the liar, that Clarence Thomas had to be confirmed. And I think on Thursday, Dr. Blasey Ford will also see a bit of pandemonium outside the hearing room. But I think mostly, as far as my reporting has shown, there are women coming from all over the country to show support for Dr. Blasey Ford before she's even uttered her first word of testimony. So in the space between the Anita Hill hearings and now, you've had this galvanizing effect of women, all of whom respond to this kind of conduct and feel they know what it's like to go through sexual assault, sexual harassment, and they go into this believing Dr. Blasey Ford, that was absent back in 1991 when people didn't really know what sexual harassment was in the workplace.
Okay, fair enough from the standpoint of the person making the allegations and the support that they may have, and as you say, the obvious public support and the public awareness. But you've watched the political debate unfold over the last week or so. You've seen the president's tweets. Has the other side of the equation, has that changed?
Well, I had hoped it would change because I thought the Me Too movement would have given politicians pause before they came out and seemed to attack an accuser who has not yet been fully heard yet. But between Chairman Grassley on Friday saying, well, if she doesn't respond by 5 o'clock, we just are going ahead, that doesn't look like a very thoughtful way to deal with Dr. Blasey Ford's charges. And the president's clearly biased tweeting. He doesn't know anything about this issue or that case. He has a record of being a sexual, abuser and someone guilty of sexual misconduct himself. So I wish I felt that, times had changed and Dr. Blasey Ford would face a more sort of decorous atmosphere in Washington, but I must say these recent events worry me.
Back then, in 1991, Clarence Thomas, of course, very strong, vociferous in his denial, calling it at the time a high-tech lynching. We've seen Brett Kavanaugh being very strong in his denial. Has anything in terms of the litmus test changed in the denials that we're seeing and the ability to puncture through those to get closer to the truth?
Well, as you and I both know, in any proceeding, whether it's a courtroom or a highly politically charged Senate hearing, categorical denial is hard to pierce through in any event. It's the absolute safest political route for both of these nominees who are depending on, unified Republican support to jam their confirmation through. But it's categorical denial absent proof on the other side and real collaboration on the other side is difficult.
What will you be watching for this week in terms of the test of the Me Too movement and how it might play out in this hearing?
Well, as I said, I think Dr. Blasey Ford can rely on a deep reserve of support from women who want to see her heard and want to see her treated fairly by this committee. And if she isn't, and, if Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed in a process that looks like he's being muscled through, I think the political reverberations in November are going to be quite stark.
And do you think that's how it will play out this week?
Well, I'm a reporter, first and foremost. I have been for more than 40 years. I don't predict. I will bring the benefit of history with me to covering the events on Thursday. That's all I can say.